Hey guys, this is Josh here with Trillium Wild Edibles. I'm sitting inside of my house and I'm about to make some lobelia tincture, so stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back. Alright, so we're going to make some lobelia tincture today, and you can see I've got a few things laid out here in front of us, and these are going to make our lobelia tincture a lot easier for us to make. So let's go over what we have here. The first things first is we have our menstruum. Now a menstruum, if you're not familiar with tincture terminology, a menstruum is something that's used to extract medicinal qualities or properties out of an herb. In this case, we need acetic acid or apple cider vinegar. Make sure you have raw, unfiltered, organic apple cider vinegar. You want to make sure it's organic and raw. The next thing we have here is some American Harvest brand organic vodka. What we have here is an entire plate of lobelia herb ready to use. Here we have lobelia leaf, stems, seed pods, flowers, and seeds. Here you'll notice that we have our tincture jars. I have a couple 2-ounce jars here, then I have some 1-ounce jars. This 1-ounce jar is clean. I'm actually going to be using this for measuring. So we're going to set that one aside. These are presumably going to be filled up with tincture. We'll actually see how much we get in the end. The thing with tincture is sometimes you don't ever really know what you're going to get in the end. Some other things I have here. I have some labels so we can label our jars. I also have a Sharpie to make labeling easier. And you're going to need a jar so you can set your herb and menstruum, your tincture, as it's being prepared in, so that way you can set it in a dark, cool spot. So I've got a jar ready for that. So now that we've gone through the things that we need, let's go ahead and get started on making our lobelia tincture. Alright, so before we make our lobelia tincture, there are a couple things I should mention first before we get into it. One of the first things I'm going to mention is that if you do some research online about making tinctures, you're going to find a lot of different things about menstruum ratios, herb to menstruum ratios, etc. Now that requires some mathematics, and some people aren't okay with that, some people don't like it, and some people feel it's not actually necessary. I'm one of those people that sometimes feels it's not always necessary, but if you want to do so for peace of mind, you want to look up the herb to menstruum ratio you should use. With lobelia, you are looking at a 1 to 10 herb to menstruum ratio. Now, I'm not going to be following that exactly, and for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to get into herb to menstruum ratios or anything like that, really. The only thing I'm going to get into is the amount of acetic acid to use, the amount of vinegar to use. That's all I'm going to get into mathematically, just because, like I said, I don't feel it's always necessary. You may be different, you may want something different just for your own comfort level, and that's okay. Okay, so the first thing we need to do to start making our tincture is we need to take our plate of herb and we need to just stuff it in this jar. There's nothing fancy about this part. Okay, now right now you guys can probably see all of these little bitty specks on this plate. Those little bitty brown or black specks are actually the seeds of Lobelia inflata. You can see there are a lot of them, and they are extremely tiny. Now the seed and the seed pods are the most potent part of lobelia. So whenever you're making your tincture for the very first time, I would personally recommend you only use leaves and the stems. And if you find that to be too weak, next time you make some, add some of the seeds. That's my personal recommendation just for safety concerns. We just want to tilt the plate and then tap it. And we're going to see most of those seeds are going to fall down to the corner here. And then we just scoop those into our jar. Alright, now you may remember me saying in the beginning that this one jar here, it is empty. Though it's labeled Reishi, it is empty. And it has been cleaned. You may remember me saying in the beginning that this jar is for measuring. And this is for measuring my amount of apple cider vinegar so I know I have the right amount of acetic acid. Now the reason acetic acid or apple cider vinegar is used in tincture of lobelia is because lobeline, one of the main chemical constituents of lobelia, is extracted through acetic acid. Some people use entirely apple cider vinegar. I like a mix of vodka and apple cider vinegar for my tincture personally. So what we want to keep in mind is, since we're going for about 4 ounces of tincture in the end, possibly 5, it might make 5. And again, we don't have to worry about being too exact. I'm going to need about an ounce, 1 fluid ounce of apple cider vinegar. And these jars are 1 fluid ounce, so that'll make it really easy for me to know I have the right amount. So we're just going to set our plate underneath it, so in case we spill anything here. Okay, now we've got an ounce of apple cider vinegar. So what we're going to need now is we're going to need 4 ounces of organic vodka. So first we're going to pour our 1 ounce of apple cider vinegar in our jar of lobelia herb, and we're ready to go. Make sure we get as much of it out here as we can. And then at this point, we want 4 to 5 of these. Now we want to make, the main thing to keep in mind is that we want this herb to be completely covered. I want to go with just a touch more because some of it is going to absorb into the herbs. And then this little bit that spilled on the plate, we're just going to dump it right inside. And then if you really, really want to, you can just lick the plate. Though I personally would not recommend that if you've never taken lobelia. Okay, so now that we've got our jar of lobelia herb, we just want to make sure that we get every part of this herb wet. We'll just take a wooden spoon. You don't want to use anything metal in this. You want to make sure you use wood. Reason being, the acid content in this will actually affect the medicinal qualities in the end if you use metal. So now that we've got all of our herb covered, we've made sure it's all wet. We just need to put the lid onto our jar, and then all we have to do is label it. Alright, so now that we're done, all we've got to do is shake this up some, and we just want to set this in a dark, cool spot. And you want to let it sit there for 3 to 6 weeks, just depending on the strength of tincture you want in the end.